Night folds over Thebes like a linen shroud. Oil lamps stutter along the eastern wall, throwing reeds of gold against sandstone. The floor is cool, too smooth from centuries of bare feet. Incense hangs in the air, myrrh and blue lotus, so thick you can taste the sweetness on your tongue. A copper razor gleams beside a bowl of cold water. Somewhere beyond the pylons, the Nile breathes. She stands very still. Her name will not be recorded. Her braid has been cut away. The last wisps cling to her neck like cobweb. A chant rises from the hypostyle hall, voices layered with sistrum bells, a river of sound washing toward her and then receding. Linen sticks to her damp skin. The white robe is a promise in a cage. Pure, the women told her. Chosen, the men said. Hands lift the razor. The blade kisses her scalp. The room smells of copper and perfumed oil. The shadow of the priest passes across the wall, long and thin, like a vulture's wing. Beauty, then silence. Ceremony, then fear. The lamp flame leans and steadies. The chant swells. In the space between two drum beats, the girl's breath goes shallow, as if the air itself has narrowed. The door opens. The torch moves. She stops breathing. Tonight the gods will take her voice, her hair, and her name, and she will still be expected to smile. But tonight, her childhood would end. They told her it was holiness. They told her the cut was only hair. They told her the robe was only cloth. They told her the silence was only discipline. The words were soft. The finality was sharp. She learned to keep her eyes lowered, not to look at the statues when the priest passed, not to meet the gaze of women who had been here longer, not to watch the door they locked from the outside. The stone was always cool at dawn, slick with dew where mist coiled in from the river. The sistrum trembled in her hands. So did she. They said she would belong to the god, no husband, no children, no future claim by any mortal man. It sounded like freedom when you were still in the street. It sounded like safety. Inside these walls it sounded like emptiness. Listen to the rhythm of it. Wake before first light. Wash in cold water. Shave again if any shadow returns. Speak only the lit words. Touch only basin, broom, and bronze. Eat the temple bread. Drink only what is measured. Wait. Obey. Disappear. They waited for morning. They waited for favors. They waited for death. If you understand the rules, you begin to understand the harm. If you understand the titles, you begin to understand the theft. What you're about to learn was never meant to be told. Pan slowly across the colonnade. The columns rise like petrified papyrus, the painted stars fading on the ceiling. The camera glides past an open doorway where a lamp smoke curls and vanishes. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear reveals how power destroys those who can't resist it. Before I reveal what happened to her, you need to understand who controlled the doors. Let me tell you how it began. Thebes, the city of Amun. The great temple of Karnak swelling like a kingdom within a city, added to by kings and queens from the Middle Kingdom through the late period. Here politics wore perfume. Here, religion wore a crown. In the early New Kingdom, around 1550 BCE, Moses I endowed the temple and raised its priesthood. A stela records donations that made gods into landlords and priests into administrators. Within this current emerged a new shape of power, the god's wife of Amun, a royal woman whose title would evolve over centuries into a near-sovereign priestess at Thebes, from the 23rd to 26th dynasties. Property, processions, and precedents gathered around her like birds to a granary. The office is traced in inscriptions from Moses' donation stela to the adoption stela of Nitocris, year 9 of Samtikvern, every 656 BCE, documents carved in stone to make obedience last. To understand this, we must look at purity. Herodotus, wandering and curious, watched the temple routines with foreign eyes. He wrote of priests shaved smooth every other day, linen only, papyrus sandals, and cold water washings twice by day and twice by night. He noticed taboos on foods, on fish, on beans. He did not see tenderness. He saw a system of separation. We hear the echo across time. To serve the god, you trim the human away. Diodorus, writing later, preserves a detail that matters. During service, priests practiced abstinence. The god demanded it. The calendar enforced it. Bodies were instruments to be tuned or muted. Desire, a stain to be scrubbed. That which made you human was precisely what had to be contained. Now we need to go back to words. Virgin is not an Egyptian word. There is no one-to-one match. Terms that modern readers translate as maiden often meant young or beautiful or not yet a mother. Youth and ritual purity mattered. Male guardianship and temple seclusion mattered. The rigid European idea you might bring to the phrase temple virgin does not fit neatly in an Egyptian mouth. The language itself resists our certainty, yet the system did not need our word to do its work. The temple created ranks of pure personnel, wab priests and their female counterparts in certain periods, musicians, chantresses, adoratrices, each tethered to ritual roles that were close to ordinary life. A woman could be powerful in a temple and invisible in a crowd. A girl could be chosen and have everything human, friends, laughter, future peeled away like hair from a scalp. And here is the earthquake. In later centuries, the god's wife of Amun, this royal priestess, grew so rich and politically central that she became a shadow king in the south, bound to ceremonial celibacy and compelled to adopt a successor. That adoption, transaction, ceremony, and submission stitched one life into another like silk through cloth, each stitch a tie that could not be easily cut. This is where everything changed. Because when religion takes on the weight of government, obedience becomes a tax you pay with your body, and the receipt is carved in stone. But that was only the beginning. Let me tell you about the god who ate cities, Amun, hidden and everywhere. When Thebes rose, Amun rose with it, fusing with Ra to become Amun-Ra, the breath of creation and the authority of kings. What a convenient god! He preferred those who built him pylons and gave him land. The more you gave him, the more he agreed that you should rule. Enter the high priests of Amun, men with the king's power and the god's voice. In the third intermediate period, as pharaohs weakened and Nubian and Libyan dynasties jostled for control, the priesthood became the local constant, a granite weight in a shifting riverbed. The god's wife of Amun, first an honorific, hardened into office. Royal daughters were installed in Thebes as divine adoratrices, God's hand, God's wife, with estates, treasuries, and staff at their command, Shepenwepet, Amenerdis, Nitocris, names like doors that open into rooms of incense and ink. They were princesses, Libyan, Kushite, Saite, bound to the southern cult to stabilize rule. Their adoption stelae are not sentimental texts. They are legal machines. They declare what will be given, what will be retained, and what will never be permitted. He believed himself a god. The empire agreed, and the god's wife, his consort, could not be the consort of any man. Celibacy served politics. If a royal woman in Thebes bore a son, the north might face a rival king fed by southern wealth. Better to deny the womb than risk the throne. Scholars read the silences and inscriptions. The celibacy of the god's wife, especially in the late period, is best understood as a political necessity. Adoption, ritually staged, publicly celebrated, was a succession plan disguised as piety. Pan across the river at dawn, east bank glittering with pylons, west bank heavy with graves. The camera finds the temple of Mut, then drifts to the avenue of sphinxes. Even the stone animals are facing forward, as if expecting an answer. Let me tell you about estates. The god's wife controlled vast lands, teams of scribes and stewards, barges and granaries. Men took oaths by her name. When she processed, priests walked backward, eyes lowered. When she spoke, accounts shifted. The high priest's voice was thunder. Hers was the storm that followed. Power braided the two together, ritual authority, economic muscle, and political leverage. And what of the girls? To feed an office like that, the temple needed a constant influx. Singers, attendants, women trained to move in ritual circles without touching the edges. The younger they arrived, the easier the shaping. Not virgins as our modern myth imagines, no sacred prostitution here, no regiment of harlots behind painted doors, but a lattice of controlled bodies, purified by shaving and washing, silenced by rules, and spent in service of a power they would never fully hold. The old tale of temple prostitution is a ghost story scholars have largely exorcised. In Egypt, the evidence points instead to abstinence during service and the policing of contact, not ritualized sex as offering. The cruelty was colder than that. It was bureaucratic, because what came next was worse. Before I reveal what happened inside her nights, we need to understand the cage. Start with the body. Shaved head every other day. No stray hair to collect dust or lice or to offend the god. Linen only, clean, scratchy, breathless in the heat. Sandals of papyrus. Repeated ablutions. Twice by day, twice by night. The skin numbed until sensation itself felt like disobedience. Food taboos, speech taboos, touch taboos, abstinence during service cycles. The god was a jealous supervisor, then the space. The precinct was a city within a city, with gates, halls, storerooms, and private chambers. Outsiders looked up and saw flags. Insiders looked down and learned the pattern of every crack in the floor. The geography trained the mind. Here you may sing, there you may not step. There sit the men who sign for the grain. Here you wait until called. And the calendar. Days loaded with God's birthdays, festivals, and fasts, some public, some deeply private. Once a month in 4, an officiant class was on, living like monastics in a time that had no Monks, separated from ordinary life by rules as practical as they were metaphysical. This is the psychology of priestly states. Rewrite the moral vocabulary. Purity becomes compliance. Obedience becomes holiness. Silence becomes virtue. Repeat it until you believe it. Repeat it until the girls believe it too. A great machine of meaning-making churns. And those who can't feed it are ground into rumor or exile. Power demanded silence. Power demanded obedience. Power demanded daughters. And so the priesthood regulated access to the sacred as if it were water in a drought. The god's wife was made symbolically a spouse to a god who needed no partner, and human partners were therefore forbidden. Failure was a scandal not because of desire, but because it threatened the order of things. Scholarship has torn the veil from one popular fantasy. In Egypt, the sacred brothel is an invention. The harm here is not hidden in titillation. It sits in the open under the word pure, where the human is stripped away until only function remains. Let me tell you about terminology again. Words like NFRT ring in the texts. Youth, freshness, beauty, not a clinical certification of untouched flesh, but the social category of a girl who is not yet born a child. The system did not need to inspect the body. It needed to control the future. A woman who never bears a child never forms a competing lineage. A girl with a shaved head is a message. This life belongs elsewhere now. Academia pan across the hall. The bodies blur. What happened next turned fear into habit. Now we return to the girl in the white robe. They call her Nefer, because it is safer to give her a borrowed beauty than to speak the name her mother used. She's 13 the night the razor takes her hair. She is 13 when the sistrum is placed in her palm and the copper smells like rain before a storm. She does not cry. The room is listening. The first month, she counts the baths like beads. Water at dawn shocks her lungs into swallowing air. Water at dusk makes her bones ache. At night, she sleeps on her side because the lice that aren't there can't itch if she does not move. On the 7th day, she tries to laugh with another girl when the priest's back is turned. The laugh catches in her throat. The other girl shakes her head. No, only the bells are allowed to speak. The door opens. The torch moves. She stops breathing. Let me tell you about the letter she almost receives. Outside these walls, a chantress once wrote to a scribe, ordering rations for workers with a sharpness that cuts even on faded papyrus. There were women here who could command, who could bend logistics like reeds in a current. But power in the precinct does not mean freedom in the bones. Nefer learns to sing the hymn that calls the god's ka to the bark, to shake the sistrum in the rhythm that makes the air shimmer. She learns not to sing any other song. She misses the sun on her scalp. She misses the weight of hair. She misses dust stuck in her eyelashes from running along the riverbank. She misses her mother's bread, burnt at the edges. She smells only incense now, resin and musk and a sweetness that becomes a film on the tongue. They waited for morning. They waited for God. They waited for permission to speak. Because what came next was worse. When the procession moves, Nefer walks in the second row, eyes lowered. Statues loom like cliffs. The god rides in his portable shrine, curtains drawn. The people outside fall to the ground. For a moment, Nefer feels something like power. The air bows around her. Then the priest's hand on her shoulder guides her to the side, and she remembers. She is the rail, not the train. In the second year, her mother comes to the gate with a basket of figs. She has sold a necklace to bring them. The guard takes the figs. He does not take the woman's eyes off Nefer's face. They are wet. The guard does not let the woman pass. Nefer does not lift her gaze. She smells figs and cedar. She tastes iron, her lip caught under her tooth. She swallows. She bows. She returns to the shade where the ritual waits. The day the adoption is proclaimed, the courtyard floods with music and stamped sandals. A royal daughter from the north has arrived to be God's wife and divine adoratress. The festival is a pageant of obedience. Nefer watches as the older woman kneels and speaks lit words, accepts emblems, and seals the ritual with a breath that is not her own. This woman will never bear a child. Instead, she will take another into her house, to train and to rule and to inherit a burden wrapped as an honor. Nefer learns what it means. Your future is a chain of names, not a family. This is the part that cracks you quietly. There is no beating in the courtyard. There is no dungeon beneath the hymn. There is paperwork, ritual, and the constant undertow of expectation. Your body is a field. The temple determines what grows there, nothing and forever. You are kept pure to keep others safe. You are denied so that a man you will never meet may sleep well in a city you will never see. Nefer grows tall. The razor is steady on her scalp. The skin there gleams like polished stone. She is beautiful in a way that statues understand. Symmetry, stillness, control. She is rarely called by the name her mother used. In the lists, she is servant of the pure place, singer of the house of Amun. Each title is a room with no windows. The door opens. The torch moves. She stops breathing. One festival night, the bark halts in a private chamber. The god must be awakened with a hymn that only women sing. The chamber is cool, smelling of oiled wood and blue pigment. Her voice trembles, then steadies. She feels a brush of air against her scalp, maybe from a hidden door, maybe from belief itself. In that moment, a thought rises unbidden. What would it be to choose? She never speaks it. Years pass. The priesthood changes robes as dynasties change crowns. Libyans whisper into the past. Kushites step back across the border. Sate silver glitters under new banners. The temple remains a tide pool, life circling inside the walls while the sea withdraws and returns. Nefer's back aches. Her hands are calloused from the bronze and the wooden handles of the sweeping brooms. She dreams of figs. She dreams of hair. She dreams of a child who will never be born. She is not dying. It is something worse. It is being kept alive as evidence that obedience can be permanent. What happened next turned fear into legend. History does not end when a girl stops singing. By 525 BCE, Persian conquest overturns the tables. New languages echo in the halls. Old offices thin and break. The god's wife of Amun, glorious invention of a tangled age, fades, leaving stelae and tomb chapels in the deep grooves of habit. The estates are absorbed. The processions shrink. The last royal adoptive daughters slip into history like oars into water, their ripples still visible, their faces blurred. Nefer's name is not recorded. There is no trial, no scandal, no rescue. There is only the tapering of a life, the way a wick shortens while the flame pretends to be endless. She continues to wake by the drum, to wash by the basin, to walk by the bark. She grows thin, then quieter. She trains a younger girl to hold the sistrum steady. She watches the younger girl's first haircut. She does not speak. Her story was not recorded, but the silence that followed was. The long consequences do not fit on a wall. Generations learned this grammar. The sacred is what the powerful can control. The body is a ledger. Desire can be taxed. A woman can be used to stabilize a kingdom by forbidding her to become one. In Thebes, you can still read the laws carved into limestone and understand that faith and fear were taught to breathe with the same lungs. Nefer dies in her bed, if she had a bed, or on a mat rolled in a private room that smelled of cedar and chalk. One day the razor is not needed. One day the bells do not shake. The door opens. The torch moves. She stops breathing. No crowd gathers. The Nile continues unfazed, green, black, and heavy with silt. In the mortuary lists, titles are ticked off and reassigned. The priest who keeps the inkpot does not look up. Outside, children run along the river and cough on the dust of afternoon. The sun drops. The empire keeps its secrets. The walls keep their cool. The wind threads Blue Lotus into the night and carries it away. How do we judge a civilization that sanctified control? When the tools are clean and the rules are orderly, the damage becomes harder to name. There are no spilled guts in this story. There is a face without hair. There is a calendar without choice. There is a girl who comes to the gate and never walks back out again. Let me tell you about the temptation of myth. It is easy to believe the lurid tales the later world told. Brothels behind temple doors. Right as pretext. The record in Egypt points elsewhere. The cruelty here is not theatrical. It is administrative. It is the transformation of a human life into a ritual object. Before I reveal the last line, consider the oldest lesson. When the sacred and the state braid together, someone's voice is always the first sacrifice. In Thebes, the priest's purity rules were carved with the same knife that shaved a child's scalp. The god's wife was made celibate for reasons that had nothing to do with holiness and everything to do with power. Power that feared heirs. Power that feared rivals. Power that feared the uncontrolled future. They waited for morning. They waited for mercy. They waited for a door to open the other way. Temple virgins. The phrase still circulates. Heavy with a moral we'd prefer to export to people long dead. But ask your own life the question the precinct demanded daily. What are you willing to call pure so you don't have to call it cruel? Absolute power does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers the hymn and hands you a bell. In the end, the lesson is older than Karnak and wider than the Nile. When a system demands the erasure of a person to preserve itself, it has already chosen blasphemy over belief. Pan across the hall one last time. The lamps are out. The stone is cold. Return to the girl beside the basin, to the copper and the water and the white robe. Hold the camera on her face, the place where a name should be. She was only 13. And the empire called it divine.